What we're going to do is look at complex numbers. In Algebra 1, we talk about real numbers, and the two categories for real numbers are rational numbers. These are whole numbers, natural numbers, integers. They include fractions and decimals of known digits, repeating decimals that we know. And then what we have is irrational numbers, and irrational numbers are numbers where we don't know the ending digit, the most famous being pi, and square roots that we don't know. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at imaginary numbers. Notice that with each of the imaginary numbers, they have the letter I. The I stands for imaginary number. So that's how we can tell if it's an imaginary number. If it doesn't have an I, it's not an imaginary number. A complex number is a real number and an imaginary number. So when we're looking at the standard form for complex numbers, it is a plus bi. And when we graph them, we treat the real number as our x value and the imaginary number as our y value. So we could think of it as an ordered pair. So what we're going to do is we're going to plot each of these points on the complex plane. So when we're plotting them on the complex plane, what we're going to do is we're going to treat the real number as our x, so we'll go left and right, and we're going to treat the imaginary number as our y value, which will be up or down. So for the first one, what we have is 2 plus 3i. So that means that what we're going to do is we're going to go to the right 2 and we're going to go up 3. We're going to treat this as 2 comma 3. So that would be A. Now for letter B, this would be 3 minus I would be the same thing as 3 negative 1. So that's going to the right 3 and down 1. Now for letter C, notice that there's no real number. So we're just going down 2 because we're not going to the left or right. Now D, this one's kind of tricky. It really is the real number being negative 5 and the imaginary number being 4i. And so we could kind of think of it as negative 5 and then up 4. And that would be D. Okay, pause the video and try those next 4. So for letter E, what we have is positive 5, so it just goes to the right 5. Then for F, it's I, so it just goes up 1. G, it's negative 4, so we go left 4, we go down 5. And then for H, just like the one for letter D, what we're going to do is we're going to switch it around. Our real number goes first, our imaginary number goes second. So it's 2 and 1 would be our H value. So that's how we plot it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be simplifying. Now when we're simplifying this, what we have to do is remember that the square root of negative 1 is I. So when we're looking at letter A, square root of negative 4 would be just like 4 and negative 1. We know the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of negative 1 is I, so our answer is 2i. Now, the square root of negative 8, that would be 4 and 2 and negative 1. So square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I, so it's 2i square root of 2. Now, these next ones, what we're doing is we're simplifying it. So what we're going to notice is that there's a pattern. We know I is I. We know I squared is negative 1. And the reason why is because since I is the square root of negative 1, I squared would be negative 1, square root of negative 1 squared, meaning it's negative 1. I to the third would be taking the I squared and timesing it by an I. That's how we're getting negative I. And then I to the fourth is the same thing as I squared times I squared. Since I squared is negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. Now notice if we were to do I to the fifth, we would take the 1, times it by I, and what we notice is that it repeats the pattern. So that means that this right here follows a pattern of 4. Every 4 times it repeats. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide each of the numbers by 4. Whatever the remainder is, that's going to tell us what the answer is. The first one doesn't have a remainder. That means it's divisible by 4, so we're keeping that as 1 as our answer. 74, we divide it by 4. And what we get is a remainder of 2, or if you're using the calculator, it would be 0.5. 0.5 being a half being I squared, so that would be negative 1. Now, 101 divided by 4, what you're going to notice is that the remainder is 1, or if you're using a calculator, 0.25. That means that it's rotating around 25 times, and then it goes around one more, so that's why it's I. And then 215 divided by 4, what we end up with is 0.75, or a remainder of 3, and that gives us negative I. Pause the video and try these next few on your own. So when we're looking at letter G, what we have is the square root of 49 and the square root of negative 1. So that would be 7i. 12 we know is 4 and 3, and of course negative 1. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I, so it's 2i square root of 3. If we take the 11, divide it by 4, what we're going to notice is that there's a remainder of 3, or 0.75 if you use a calculator. So that means it's going to be negative I. 61, if you divide it by 4, it goes around 20 times and then has a remainder of 1. So that means our answer is I. And 500 goes in evenly, so that would be 1. And 2,222 has a remainder of 2, or 0.5, so that means that it's negative 1.